Welcome to this week's edition of Taiwan Outlook. I'm your host, Chi-Chen Lo. Last week, Taiwan just had its second peaceful transfer of power between political parties. With President Ma Ying-jeou being sworn in on May 20th, many people have high hopes about the future of politics in Taiwan. As we know that in the past 8 years, there has been a divided government which created gridlocks in many areas. But now, with the unified government, people are hoping that politics and policy in Taiwan was much smoother. In Taiwan Outlook today, we are very happy and delighted to invite Professor Liao Da-Chi of National Science University to come to our program, and she will be helping us to analyze the policies and politics in Taiwan. Professor Da-Chi, welcome to our program.
Yeah, Professor Luo, hello, and hello everyone, audience of Taiwan's Outlook.
We all read and listened to President Ma's inaugural address. What are the key messages that he wants to deliver to the people in Taiwan?
How many minutes you will give to me?
Key messages.
Key message. I think he like to serve a contrast to the current, the past administration, Chen Shui-bian's administration. I would like to use a metaphor Chinese like to use yin yang. If Chen Shui-bian is a kind of yin, then the Ma Ying-jeou like to portray a kind of yang, the other side of a kind of tai chi. Why I say that? For example, first he tried to deliver a message. The previous administration maybe is kind of corrupted, but the current one he like to portray the current administration will be very clean, set up a clean government, and also previous administration maybe like to launch the so-called constitutional reform, but the current administration want to launch this kind of reform, and the previous administration have a kind of close-up policy toward the economy, especially the cross-strait relations. But for the current government, he likes to have an open up for the development of economy. So he tried to set up a contrast to the previous administration.
But the criticism is that by distinguishing between the previous government and the current government, he's tend to divide the society again. Do you agree with that kind of assessment?
I think his intention is try to unify the government, the society. But maybe the message delivered after the delivery of the message, some people interpret what the message he delivered, because a lot of people criticize why you just the first day you take the position and you try to blame the previous government, the previous administration. So some people feel it's kind of divided society, but I think it still depends upon later on how he implemented his policy, because he set up some words and delivered some message, try to unify it, and try to say himself as also a kind of post-war immigrants, and try to merge into the society, and the society, whole Taiwanese society is so broad, is so benevolent, welcome him and vote him to be the president. I think he tried to send a message is try to unify the government. But maybe his way to set up the yin and yang, that's my interpretation, make people feel, especially people from the green camp, you try to portray the previous government so badly. That makes us very angry. I can understand that.
And we know that his campaign theme was about economy. But in the inauguration address, he talked only a little bit about economy. Is that a surprise to you?
Yes, a little bit surprised, but not that surprised, because for inauguration speech, you have to. I think he wants to please everyone.
That's right.
So try to put all ingredients into his speech. So economic section he didn't mention too much, but he thinks he set up a general guideline. But also I think because under the current constitutional design, actually so-called implementation of the policy. Is the power of the executive yuan, not really the president.
That's right.
So he just can set up the general guideline, but not the details of economic policies. That's
and
what
apparently,
I thought.
He talks a lot about the so-called cross-strait relations. What's the main message over there?
I think the message you have to see two levels. It still depends upon interpretation. The first level is try to show the friendship, try to make up the previous kind of broken lines between the two sides. So he said, no unification, no independence, no use of force. That's kind of please several sectors. That's the first message. Try to be very friendly. But the second message, I think, is kind of implicit to suggest that mainland China in the long term, we want unified under the current the so-called communist rule, but we try to if mainland China really want to have a better relationship with Taiwan, and in the long run, we want mainland China to convert to be a kind of democratic country. He tried to deliver that kind of message. So he said the key problem between the two sides is not the problem of sovereignty, it's a problem of co-values.
So the hidden message is that he does not rule out the possibility of unification for the both sides of the Taiwan Strait.
I think he didn't really rule out that, but he set up the condition. That condition is still democracy. If
That's
no
right.
democracy, mainland China cannot convert to be a democracy. Taiwan will stay on their own.
That's
So
right.
I think still the kind of developing in the future, and still wait and see, but try to give some pressure to the mainland China side. You shouldn't just use a sovereignty issue to constrain us, because you are not the real problem is not on sovereignty. It's really on the co-values.
But as you mentioned, that at the first level, he pointed out the so-called 3 no's. No unification, no independence, and no use of force. What does it mean by no unification?
I think currently nobody really wants to have a unification. There's no unification yet. That's to tell the mainland China side, don't mention about unification.
So no unification.
It's not our interest, in our interest, Taiwan's interest right now. Yeah, not at all.
Is that no talks on unification or no unification for now or for good?
For now, for good, and no talk about unification. At least that during his term, he even say during his lifetime, he wants to see a kind of unification really happen. Yeah.
But will Beijing be happy about that kind of position taken by Taiwan?
I cannot tell about Beijing's position. I just can do some kind of objective analysis. I think maybe Beijing got to understand that. And also they learned a little bit by the previous administration. The message sent out by previous administration is, if you really want to force a so-called unification, even you just say that, Taiwanese people just don't want to accept that.
That's right.
I think that message, Beijing got it. So mind you say that, actually take advantage of the previous administration.
And as you mentioned, that people read the inauguration address very carefully, word by word. And they also make comparisons between this inauguration address with the previous ones. Do you see any big differences between this inauguration speech and the previous
2004
yeah.
Chen Shui-bian's and the 2000's Chen Shui-bian's?
That's right.
Not really that careful. It's really kind of 8 years and 4 years. But I think the main difference is Chen Shui-bian really talk about the 23 million people's will to try to say, okay, everything should be decided upon the willingness of the 23 million people. Mind you, didn't mention that too much, and that's right. one point. Maybe a lot of people care about that. Second point, I think Chen Shui-bian, especially the second one, because actually the first one, Chen Shui-bian also for no one have not. Yeah. Yes, still a kind of use a negative side to constrain Taiwan's so-called diplomatic situation or whatever, constrain Taiwan's situation. Mind you, relatively speaking, it's not that negative. We call the negative list.
Yeah.
All those 3 no's, as you mentioned, no unification, no independence, no use of force, but try to, under the 3 no's, open up a kind of platform for the future negotiation or engagement with the mainland China, especially in the economic side. I think it's still kind of, I said it's a contrast, yin and yang. So because Chen Shui-bian's policy in his inauguration, especially the second term, is kind of closed up, especially kind of economics perspective. But mind you, try to, okay, if you close up that side, that door, I try to open this door. It's serve as contrast. But the main point, I think many people in Taiwan think about why you didn't mention about the 23 million people's willingness to accept what will happen in the future. But that's a kind of a key point.
In addition to the missing statement of that people in Taiwan should have the right to determine their own future, another thing that is missing, is that he did mention that Taiwan is a sovereign country. Do you think that's an important statement that he did not mention in his speech?
I think he tried to use an implicit way, still hidden one. Yeah, Taiwan is a sovereign country. Otherwise, how can we elect a president? And also, he set up certain kind of implicit word, try to say, he mentioned about Taiwan 50 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, even more than Republic
But Taiwan
of China.
could be a local, province.
I think nobody elected as a president want to just submissive to be a local leader, not a kind of national leader. So in that regard, I think he already mentioned about his post-war immigrants. So he elected by the Taiwanese people. He really appreciated, and he will fight for this land and this nation in the future. Even the nation may be confused about Taiwan or the title Republic of China, but he didn't say that very obviously. But in his heart, I believe he really treat Taiwan as a sovereign state. Yeah.
I read the speech very carefully. I find out one very important statement in his message is that he used the term 中华民族, Chinese people in general.
Yeah.
But the English version of the speech point out that we share the Chinese heritage. He didn't use the direct translation of Chinese people. Do you see any interesting differences of these two versions of a speech?
You mean the Chinese heritage and the Chinese people?
Yeah.
In China, so-called Chinese version is Chinese people, right?
Yeah.
Huayi, whatever. Actually, I tell you the truth, I didn't feel that much difference.
Yeah.
Because I think he tried to say, also I personally, I really agree with that. We are kind of share the so-called blood system. We are kind of Chinese background. And also Chinese culture. I still think Chinese culture is the one thing we should treasure. It's not one thing we should throw away. So for me, it's not so difficult to make a distinction between Chinese dissidents. I know some Chinese people like to say, we are Taiwanese, we are not Chinese. But in English, people like to put together is because the same blood system, kinship system. But some people already promote another idea, maybe we are Taiwanese. That's by identity. That's not identity, that's kind of social construct, not by blood origin. By blood origin, we are Chinese, but by socially construct, we can say we are Taiwanese. Yeah. But Chinese culture or Chinese heritage, I feel for me, it's okay because we learn about Confucianism, that kind of ancient classics. We learn a lot, and also I think treasure that is not really, it's really good for our society. It's not bad things.
Okay.
So for me, it's not that difficult. But I know for certain people, I also call myself Taiwanese. No problem with that, because I think currently we construct our identity is a Taiwanese.
Right.
But we're talking about the origin of our ancestor. We cannot refuse the fact our ancestor come from somewhere, and we have a kind of Chinese blood system.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think people had high expectations about future politics in Taiwan because, now you have a unified government. So when we come back, we'll talk about how this unified government will have on the future dynamics of domestic politics and also cross-strait policies. So don't go away. We'll be back after this message.